great. So, Barbara, how you been?
Oh, I've been doing very well, thank you, and continuing with lots and lots of regressions, especially regressions to people's extraterrestrial
Uh-huh.
encounters.
Really?
So,
Anything? Give us something. What's been special going on out there? I know you're hearing it from the other side. So yeah.
yeah, well, it's a particular unusual window into the whole phenomenon because the information that I get is just through regressing people to their own personal experiences. So people are still coming very, very frequently for regressions on Zoom or Skype or FaceTime or in person where I am in San Diego. And so it's wonderful that we've got this technology that can connect us so that we can do this work even if somebody's in another country. And of course, all over the US. So I'm really grateful for that. And so are the people who can do sessions that way. So, anyway, there's a lot going on still. And more and more people are coming without being sure that they've had these extraterrestrial experiences, but they all have had quite a number of unusual things going on for their whole lifetimes. And in other words, they might have an orb come right to them. One woman had one land in her hand.
Really?
I just talked to very recently, and it turns out that she's had extraterrestrial beings visiting her also, although she had not been aware of that until we did the regression work. And, beings are still coming into the room at night, and people are still having UFO sightings, some of which, especially if they're close sightings, some of which are actual encounters that the person had not necessarily been aware of. So, more and more people are discovering that they or remembering that they've had unusual markings on their skin, like a scoop mark or a triangular shaped bruise, or bruises that look like they might have been made by fingertips, or pinprick marks in a straight line, or in a circle, or in a triangle, or a square, or even like a spiral shape. And all of these people just knew that they could not have made that kind of marking on their own skin. So, in many cases, they've been wondering for years and years, even many decades, with some people, about what was that and what was that strange light I saw in my room, or what happened that night when I woke up and there was light in the room, and there were beings there. Somebody was there who was not human. And, sometimes they remember just a few moments of an experience like that. And then they are made to be unconscious while the rest of the experience happens. And the person is taken, very typically, the person is taken onto a UFO. But sometimes, whatever the beings come from, the action happens right there in the person's room,
Mm.
but without the person being conscious of it. So there are many cases like that. For instance, quite a number of people I've worked with have had some sort of difficult malady, some sort of illness going on, or some kind of ongoing condition. And then, they were hoping somehow to have help, but they didn't know how that could come, and the doctors didn't seem to be helping. So after a while, one night, it usually is when they're in bed asleep at night, uh, a being or more than one being will come and actually do healing. It's usually
Really?
kind of like hands on healing of that person. And the person wakes up the next morning, not necessarily knowing that anybody came and did the healing, but the person wakes up and thinks, oh my God, I feel really good. I don't feel that condition anymore. And it remains healed. So, I'm, hearing so many stories, and I even have friends who have not had regressions with me, but are talking about incidents like that might have happened 30 years ago or 40 years ago or 50 years ago, depending on the age of the person. So I think that there's really a lot more of this sort of thing happening than any of us have had any idea. We don't know what the total numbers are, but there are certainly a lot of people in the world, not just in our country, but many other countries too, where these things are happening. So I think one of the really helpful things is that more and more of this is coming out now, not necessarily in what we call the mainstream, but coming out in different forums like this one with Clubhouse and YouTube and many different podcasts about these sorts of things. So it's coming out more and more, which I think is really good because it's a big help for the people who either know that they've had these things happen or they have plenty of reason to wonder if they have.
Wow. I got a question
So,
for you, Barbara, though. Now, do
sure.
any of the regressions take anybody back toward Anunnaki, or do they see themselves part of that ancient history? Have you ever come across that?
Well, not actually with my clients. Now, I've heard other people talking about it, people who have had more experience with that, such as Elena Denon, and I think maybe even Michael Sala, people who, uh, well, Elena has had those experiences personally, and she is talking these days about the Anunnaki. She's learned a lot about them, particularly when she was taken to a big council meeting, like the Galactic Federation meetings, and met with different beings, including the Anunnaki. But there's only one or two people I have personally regressed who were convinced that the beings who came and took them were Anunnaki beings. So I think that we tend to think, or at least I do, of the Anunnaki as having come, thousands of years ago and did certain processes, certain genetic work to create humans. And then they left, apparently. Or, as far as we know, most of them left. And so I had been thinking for years now that that was way back in the past. But what's coming out a little bit more nowadays is that the Anunnaki are still existing out there and they are still interacting with some humans.
You mean
But
today, like today, like in today's time?
Yes, today's time.
Wow.
Well, this is according to Elena Denon. Now, I cannot say that that has directly come through my work, that I know that the beings are Anunnaki beings. So we do have, a tremendous range of different kinds of extraterrestrials that come and interact with people. And they're still the little grays and tall whites and Syrians and Arcturians and Pleiadians and, Andromedans and a number of other different kinds of species that we hear about in the regressions. People have experiences with them, but those beings have never mentioned their name, of the name of the type of being that they are. So, in many, many cases, in fact, most cases in my regression work, the people who's being regressed, that they will describe lots of details about the beings who are doing things with them, but they don't usually get a name for the beings. Now, there are certain types of beings that people, when they are regressed, they will remember belonging to a group that we've heard of. Like we've heard of the little grays, and we've heard of the reptilians, and we've heard of the mantis beings, and we've heard of hybrid, ET human hybrid beings on the ships. So plenty of people I've worked with describe those beings, but then there's a whole bunch of other beings that come through people's regressions that we just don't have any name for.
Wow.
So we can't just categorize, exactly who's coming and who isn't coming to do these experiences with human beings.
I got a question for you. Lately, Barbara, last couple of YouTube shows I've been doing, I've been really tapping toward like the religion side of things, in the Bible, how people, who really and where we really come from. And it's been really a great last few weeks. I had a bishop that came on that walked away from the clergy because, he just said he just had enough of the other side of things, and he wants to kind of promote what he called the truth. What are your thoughts nowadays that we're coming to this disclosure and the effect of religion when it comes down? Because you got people, like you said, you're regressing people. They gotta, at this point, after being regressed, do they thought of religion change? Like, oh wow, it's all different. But what are your thoughts now that we're now coming toward that? Yeah.
Well, you're asking 2 or 3 questions there.
Okay.
And that's fine. That's just fine. Um, but taking the last one, the many people I've worked with had been raised in a specific religion. Often it was a Catholic religion. Sometimes it was, like just a couple of days ago, I regressed somebody who had been raised by Rosicrucian parents. And, you get people from many different religious backgrounds. But after they've had these experiences, many of them say themselves that they have become more what they call spiritual rather than religious. And many of them have left their original religious upbringing behind because they have a more expanded view now of other beings in the universe, and that God has created all of these beings, not just us. And so their viewpoint usually gets greatly expanded. And some of the beings that they have interaction with seem to be really high spiritual beings, even if we would call them extraterrestrial or alien. Some of them are in other dimensions, higher dimensions, and yet still can interact with people. So, yeah, I think that that's a trend, as far as I can see, of people who have these encounters, that they kind of leave behind the specific religious training they had, whatever that was, and may continue some of it, not leave it behind totally, but expanding it to include so much more in reality and in their concept of God. So I think that that's a very significant thing happening.
Wow. What about, let me make sure I'm testing it. If someone said my mic is a little low. Testing out in the YouTube channel. If you're watching here, listening on Clubhouse, we are also live on YouTube as well. So I do have a face for TV if you want to see me there. But in the chat, let me make sure my mic is up. Is everyone hearing me okay now or not? Just want to make sure.
I am.
Well, you are. That's great. So, okay, Barbara, I'm gonna ask I'm not getting the answer yet. Let me see from my tech people. Not seeing anything. 1 second. Boy, I'm left out on a cliff right now. They listening to me too. I know they
Oh,
are. I know they are. All right. So, Barbara, here's a question. Um,
okay.
how many past lives do we have? You know, I mean,
Oh,
you know what I mean? How many times? Because I also had a time that I was you know, there was someone that did a reading and she says, "Well, you're an old spirit, Roderick, and I think your final run is here. It's like you this might be your last." So I'm like, how will somebody know that? But I respect what the termination, but or whatever she said. But how many lives are we here since you've done a lot of these regressions? What are your thoughts?
yes. Well, actually, I was trained initially in the 1980s. I was trained for 5 years in conducting past life regression therapy. So I've done a lot of the past life regressions. And I don't know that we know exactly how many lives anybody has had, but from the work I've done and the work that my colleagues have done, it certainly indicates that we have been incarnating and reincarnating for thousands of years. Because sometimes, um, on rare occasion, I will regress a person back to a life in Atlantis. So
What?
that was a long time ago. And even further back than that, I've regressed a couple of people who were on the continent of Lemuria. So these, those civilizations lived a long, long time ago. And it certainly seems as if most people have probably had hundreds, maybe thousands of previous lifetimes. And then apparently, uh, there are new souls that get created. And so new people come into a first lifetime. And somebody did a study on this a long time ago and brought forth the fact that when you look at a person, you look at the person's face and particularly look at the person's eyes. Um, if the eyes are set back in a bit, that person has had many, many, many lifetimes.
Really?
And if a person, you're looking at a person whose eyes are just kind of like right out there at the surface, um, looking sort of wide eyed and innocent, and um, that person may be a younger soul, a newer soul. So this might be the first or second or third incarnation of that person. So the person who was talking about this, who had done some research on it, showed pictures. And I remember one of the pictures, it was of one of our philosophers, and as an older gentleman. And you had to really kind of look carefully to look into the eyes of that person in the photograph. And then this person showed pictures of young, very attractive women who would be models, perhaps, and their eyes were just kind of just right out there at the surface. You didn't have to look at all to really look in the eyes. They were just right out there for anyone to see, kind of like eager, like, "Ooh, here I am," and that might be a newer soul, somebody who's maybe here for the first incarnation, or maybe, as I said, second or third incarnation.
Wow, that it's pretty interesting that when you said that people were you that you regressed was back into Atlantis, like you said, that's a long, long, long time ago, and it's
Yes,
and it's like okay, then what's happening with all these souls? Is there a soul backup? In other words, it's just so many. If we're staying here all this time, or it like you just said, there are some people that some new souls, and the question would be for me, this is just my own question, is what happens to the soul when it's done, or what happens
When it does what? What happens to
when
the
it's
soul
yeah when it's done, when the soul have done been here so many times that it's saying this is it, I'm done.
Well, what I have heard from others, um, and I think it makes sense, is that it's not just how many times have you been here. I mean, maybe you've been here 100 times, a few hundred, 1,000, a few thousand, but the point is that when that soul has developed into a much more spiritual lifetime, and a lifetime of service, of selflessness, that's the point at which the soul can choose not to come back into physical lifetimes again. And that soul goes up into even higher planes than the regular spirit realm that we go to after we die. But there are higher dimensions, higher planes than that. And so that soul that has developed so much that it has become really just of service, goodness, selflessness, um, doesn't need to come back to Earth to learn to do that. It's already learned that. And so it can choose to go into those higher realms. And then I have heard that the ultimate goal for the soul is to be high enough in dimensions and, of course, spirituality so that it can merge with the Godhead, can merge with the source of all. So at that point, it certainly the soul would lose any kind of sense of earthly identification. But it would be apparently what I have heard from others, it is a very blissful state to be part of the great creative source, which we tend to call God.
Wow.
So if we're still here, still coming back into this incarnation and maybe future incarnations, we can know that we just have not advanced spiritually that much and or enough to not come back here anymore.
Yeah, it's when I had that reading, it was just last night, and
Oh,
the lady says, "Well, I just want you to know that you're an old soul. You've been here many times, and it seems that you're now have achieved some of the things that you come here to learn, perfect, or whatever. And this may be your last." And I was like, I didn't know how to receive that. I was like,
right.
I didn't know if it was like
Well,
eerie, or should I be proud of it, and I was just like floored, and I was speechless. And I talk for a living, and I was speechless. I was like,
oh, I bet.
yeah,
That's quite to hear. Well, that could be that's an accurate prediction. Uh, maybe it will, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But that's a very interesting thought. So you see, we have an opportunity in each lifetime to learn certain things that the soul needs to learn by having human experience. And so in one lifetime, we might learn how to be more efficient. In another lifetime, we might learn how to be more outspoken. In another one, we might learn how to live a life of service. In another lifetime, we might learn how to be a great financial success.
mm,
Another one, we might learn how to be a terrific athlete. In another one, we might be one to serve others by means of being a teacher. So you see, I think well, and then in some lifetimes, we experience being what we would consider a really bad person, doing bad things. And then in another lifetime, it's as if the soul wants to have a really different experience. So we come and we have a lifetime of being a really good person. And then my past life therapy colleagues and I came to the conclusion, this was back in the late 1980s, that there seemed to be with many people sort of what we called a trilogy of lifetimes happening. In other words, in one lifetime, you might be the perpetrator of something really terrible, really doing things to hurt other people. And that, like child abuse, let's say, beating up your young child. Then in another lifetime, you would actually be born into a family where there are parents like that, so that you get to experience being the abused one rather than the abuser. You're receiving the abuse. And then in the next lifetime, that person might come back and be one of those people, like a therapist of some kind or doctor, who will help the victims of child abuse. So it's sometimes there's a little series of things like that we get to learn from one lifetime to another. And then once we've learned that theme about abuse, then we might go on to something else in the next lifetime, like a whole different focus. So what I've been aware of for a long time is that the soul, which is what we all basically are, rather than our being a person who has a soul, we are a soul who happens to be in this particular lifetime right now. And that the soul needs to experience everything that's possible for human beings to experience. So that's why there's such a variety of cultures and races and parts of the world that we choose, for particular incarnations, and that we have what we might consider much more positive lifetimes in certain ones, and then more negative ones in other lifetimes. So it's all for gaining experience for the development of the soul. And then to go back to your question a few minutes ago about the last lifetime, when you have experienced a tremendous range of different kinds of experiences, and you have developed into a more spiritual person, a person of service to others, selflessness, that you might be complete with having to experience Earth lifetimes. So I think that's a hopeful perspective.
Yeah, I think it is. It is. And, only thing that challenged me, Barbara, is, I have people, or you see people out there that may be handicapped, or there may be really going through some life trauma. And it just makes you wonder why in the heck would their soul want to experience that, right? And what's the benefit of that? But yet we go through it in our life and it's traumatic. You know what I mean?
Right. So you might be a beautifully functioning athlete, total health and vim and vigor in one lifetime. In another one, you might have severe physical disabilities. But again, the soul develops and learns from all of those experiences. And the same with being good and being bad. The soul gets to have that as part of its understanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I have someone in the chat was just posting that she says spirits get bored, so they ask to come to Earth to experience life.
I know, that's so cute. I've heard that too. Bored in the sense that I think when we're on Earth, uh, most of us get used to a certain amount of drama, and drama often comes with negative things. It's dramatic because it's negative. Sometimes it's dramatic because our experience is extremely positive too. But anyway, we all, either personally or vicariously through movies and plays and so forth, um, we seem to be drawn, some people more than others, to drama, which gets portrayed for us, in the movies and television, etc. And and then compared to that, when we're in the spirit realm for a long time, like 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years, I've heard this too, as that person said, that the soul gets bored. It's so easy, so pleasant, so wonderful there. But there's still the component of having been a human and having had a lot of drama. Like look at the horse jockeys, for instance, the drama that they have in the motor car racers and the downhill skier races, and I mean, football players. You could, that their lives are built around training and drama and competition and perfection. So that has a lot of drama to it, all of it, all of those aspects. So yeah, I've heard that too. That when you've had this wonderful, easy, carefree spirit existence in that realm for a while, that some people want more growth and development, and they just want more experience. They want to be in the physical body again. Now, a very interesting thing that has come to my awareness, in addition to all this, is that souls can also, if they choose to, they can incarnate as what we call extraterrestrial beings. And I have done work with quite a number of people who realized through the work that they themselves were one of those kinds of extraterrestrials in previous lifetimes, or at least in one lifetime, or maybe a few lifetimes. And then eventually that soul decides to have some human experience in incarnation, and they come, of course, to planet Earth and get born through human parents.
Wow.
So I think the picture is wider than we have had any idea.
So when you just mentioned that some souls, and make sure I heard that right, sound like you said they come back as possible ETs. Is that correct?
Yes, in some lifetimes they're they have a lifetime as an extraterrestrial on another planet or in another spaceship.
How is that possible? I mean, it's possible, but I can't wrap my head around it that now it takes us between, how people always say, well, okay, people ask me, right, I'm just making this kind of simple here. What do aliens look like? And I said, well, what if we look like them? Now we're going back to the Anunnaki stories, and maybe they created us. And now the tie-in you just said that some souls, or when you do some of these regressions, they come back or has been seen as ET. So that makes it almost like there's a real huge connection between these extraterrestrials and what we all been looking for, and maybe we all are the same. You know how sometimes they say, well, the ETs that we see today are ancient astronauts. In other words, they were us from the past and we come back. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of crazy.
Oh, I know, because we are very, very indoctrinated here on Earth as humans, indoctrinated into the idea of linear time, past, present, and future. And we guide our whole lives around that, around the clock and the time of day and what we consider yesterday, what we consider tomorrow, and what we consider today. So that's um, past, future, and present. And I mean, we totally, at least I can say for myself, and I think most others, have completely accepted that that is how it is. That's reality. But some of these other beings, extraterrestrial beings, have a whole different perspective about that. And they do not think of time as being linear, and they think of all time being simultaneous. In other words, everything is happening at this moment. Everything that we consider past, present, and future is happening right now. So there, from that perspective, there really is no past. And from that perspective, there's no future. And from that perspective, some of the beings out there say that they are from our future, but actually the future, and they know it, is happening right now. So that's why they can have contact with us now.
Wow.
Because everything's happening now. Now that's a real challenge for me, I must say, because
Okay.
I'm very, very indoctrinated, like I think we all are, into the idea of past, present, and future. We write our books in that way. We teach about life and the world and history in past, present, and future. Um, and so I personally don't know if that theory is correct, but I do know that some of the other beings see it that way, that all time is simultaneous, which basically means there is no time, even though we have clocks that indicate time from our point of view. So anyway, it's a very difficult concept for me to really, really believe, but it's that concept is out there, and apparently countless numbers of beings live by that.
Okay, we're going to get into, if you have time, I want to talk about star seeds in a minute, but right now, take me into, is it possible, have you ever done a regression where someone actually solved their own murder or something that happened a long time ago, or, hey, you give it, because you hear these stories, and there was one we just posted up of the Russian, I think the guy was Boriska, who was a boy who claimed to have reincarnated from Mars. That's one we'll talk about. But this other part of this is, you hear these stories of these young kids, and I was reading an article where the young little boy, I think was 8 or 10 years old, was telling people who murdered him in his past life. Have you ever ran across any regressions where someone stopped at the point where this was where they were, hurt or killed in the regression, or talked about someone else who
Uh,
done some
yeah,
harm?
I definitely have. Um, I have not regressed anybody who was deliberately murdered and experienced that in the regression, but I've regressed many, many people through whatever it was that caused their death. And sometimes, it was a bad accident, or, the roof caved in on them, or, something, an accident like that. Sometimes they were imprisoned and died. Sometimes they were tortured and died. Um, yeah, and in the regression, they just go right through that and into the afterlife, and they're just fine, and they're looking back on that lifetime, and they're already able to sort of get a perspective about that life and what that life was about, what they learned. We have the opportunity to learn so much in every lifetime. So, yes, people definitely can find out how they died or were they killed, and probably even who deliberately murdered them, although I haven't had that specific one come up in a regression.
Wow, that's powerful. If you're listening to us in Clubhouse, we are live on YouTube as well. Why the Big Secret YouTube channel. If you have not had an opportunity, come over and subscribe to the channel. We've been doing growing in leaps and bounds. We're really getting some great things happening here on the channel. And right now, we're speaking with the greatness of my friend Barbara Lamb. It's been a while since we talked, and I'm glad she hopped in.
Yeah.
Star Seeds, Barbara, Star Seeds. I was doing a show, or was going to put the show together on Star Seeds. And I started trying to reach out into my own community, trying to find different people. And it was kind of pretty hard to, some people would come out and they said, Roderick, I'm a Star Seed. Or I would ask, just give me some information. How do you feel that way? Or what makes you feel that you are? Give me your interpretation of a Star Seed.
Well, I think a star seed is a person who's born here fully as a human, but that person, even in early childhood, usually has some connection with some of the benevolent extraterrestrial beings. And this child, and growing up into an adult, um, usually feels that they are here for a purpose. They have a mission to help in some way. And usually part of that mission is to let other people know about the other beings out there. And so they may not have the genetics of an extraterrestrial or a group of extraterrestrials, but they do have a connection with them, and they have experiences with them. They have visits from them, and the beings who come to them are very benevolent, and they would like to see help coming to humans, which the extraterrestrials cannot live here. They wouldn't survive here, nor would they be accepted here, probably. So they can do work to help humanity by inspiring these starseed children. And then, of course, these children grew up to be starseed adults, and they carry on the same mission to be helpful to humanity and help to be sort of a bridge between humans and the benevolent extraterrestrials. Now, I want to distinguish between star seeds and hybrids, because I've done a lot of work about the ET human hybrids ever since the 1990s, and have written a book called Meet the Hybrids with Miguel Mendonça, young man in England. And the hybrids who live here on Earth are people who were carried in their mother's wombs full term and were born just the way the rest of us do. But either during conception or during life in the mother's womb, they were given extraterrestrial genetics. And so, therefore, we could consider them an ET human hybrid. Now, these people also are here to help to upgrade the consciousness of humanity. And they are doing the work that the benevolent ETs who gave them their genetics, that those beings would like to see done here on Earth. But again, they cannot be here. They cannot live here. They can come here for very short periods of time, but they cannot live here because they wouldn't be able to withstand our bacteria and viruses and so forth. And they look different enough that they would probably not be accepted by most other human beings. So they create these hybrids who do the benevolent work here that the beings would like to see done. So I think it's a very wonderful program. And the ET human hybrids whom I know, and know some of them really well, that they feel very privileged and very honored, blessed that they get to do this work and get the encouragement and the visits from the beings who help to hybridize them.
So why do most, I can't say why, but most starseeds that I've spoken with feel that they are hybrids, or but like you said, there's a big distinction between the two.
Yes, well, I think we're just sort of talking about categories. Some people who are starseeds might be hybrids. They might have the genetics from some of the beings. Some of the starseeds might not have the genetics from them, but they do have a close connection with them. They do have visits from them. Some of them channel some of the extraterrestrial beings. Some of them get downloads of information and perspective from the extraterrestrials they're connected with. So um, they're all here. Starseeds and hybrids are here for very, very benevolent service to upgrade humanity, actually, to upgrade our consciousness.
What about people with, I think we may have had this conversation in the past, and I did just hold up your book on YouTube, Meet the Hybrid. So I held it up for the audience to see, because
Oh, great.
I have my copy with my nice note from you inside, and I'm not going to read it to them. It's personal. It's between you and us. It's between you and us. But what about RH negative blood? I know we've had this like conversation, and that still comes up now, where people now are saying, wait a minute, this is extraterrestrial blood. And then, of course, we move into this royal bloodline type things. But let's go with the RH negative blood.
A lot of people with the Rh negative blood turn out to have some kind of connection with some of the extraterrestrials. Now, I do not know, so I cannot say if everybody with Rh negative blood is connected in some way with some of the extraterrestrials, but many of them are. I myself um, discovered sort of by accident when I had my third child that I have Rh negative blood. And I do not think that I have extraterrestrial genetics. However, I certainly do have a feeling of affinity for them and appreciation for them and extreme interest in them. So I don't know if the Rh negative blood has something to do with that or not.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Because I did a huge room, I think last year, and but a lot of women that came up that seemed to have all these similarities when it came down to RH negative blood, and I just thought it was just so profound. And they did start a Discord group, and hopefully they still communicate with one another as well. But let's get into, and I know you just popped in, but hey, it's a rare moment. So I got Barbara Lamb in. I got a lot of questions. So
I didn't.
hybrid.
I didn't even know. Didn't even know you were on. I just
I haven't
turned
been
on.
on in 4 months. I haven't been on
Oh,
Clubhouse. Yeah, I'm on
uh,
YouTube. I'm on YouTube. I've did some film for. I don't know if you know by now. I have a TV show I'm in called Alien In Games. That's on the Discovery Plus channel. I'm on a TV
cool.
show for Fox Tubi called Aliens, Extraterrestrials, or Roswell 75. I'm in a documentary that's on Billy Carson's channel, which is called The Black Knight Satellite Beyond the Signal.
Whoop.
Actually, in about 2 weeks, I'll be in a show with George Norrie on Beyond Belief with Gaia. And then,
Good.
then I'll
Good.
be in another show with Regina Meredith on Gaia. And I just filmed two documentaries for this guy. I forget the name of the shows that's going to be on Amazon. And then last couple of weeks ago, I was in LA filming 3 episodes for Prometheus Ancient Aliens History Channel. Yeah.
Oh, good
So
for you.
I've been busy. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I'm very pleased to hear all this.
But
So
hybrids. But go ahead.
yeah, is the YouTube channel um, visual or just
It's
audio?
visual. It's visual. There. We were actually doing a show on. I was trying to. Well, I was trying to take them on a journey with me about Anunnaki. Just learn some stuff. But yeah, it's visual. Actually we're live right now. So it's about 100 folks here live on YouTube. So they're listening to you. I have Clubhouse plugged into the YouTube channel. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, unless you want to hop
Oh,
on YouTube, I'll send you that link. I know you got that camera and stuff. So
well, I'm fine with the audio for right now.
no, that's fine. That's fine. And I know. And how you been? I know you had a had a little things that was going on, and but you're okay now. So
Well, I'm very healthy and fine, and I did last February fall and
yes,
break
yes.
a finger, and I'm still uh, needing some help in walking with trekking poles, but in terms of health, I've been doing wonderfully. So very grateful for that. Yeah, still very busy, very active doing the work, and so I feel very blessed.
Hey, well, that's fine. You are blessed, and you've done a wonderful job, and just all the things that you do and continue to do. So hybrids. We, there was a report. I don't know if it was real or not, but I think it came from some of the courses where finally they were saying that the government is acknowledging that there are stories of women being pregnant by ETs. Um, and it came out a few weeks back, about 3 or 4 months. We all talked about it a little bit. It was just
Sure.
behind the scenes, but is this
Right.
is this something that is going to come forward? I mean, because now I'm thinking, when a woman or if an ET does impregnate someone here, are they allowing these babies go to full terms, or this mystery that someone says I was pregnant and now I'm not, and I don't even know how I got pregnant?
Right. Oh my gosh, there's so many women who've experienced that. And of course, they go on with their lives. And I meet them sometimes when they're in their 50s or 60s or 70s. And yet they do remember, of course, because that's pretty dramatic, that suddenly they were pregnant. And even um, women who have not been with a man ever or been with a man for a number of years, uh, can suddenly feel pregnant and get a doctor's verification that, yes, indeed, they are pregnant. And then they gestate that little embryo for about 2 months or so, usually less than three. And then the woman is taken again, and that little embryo is removed from her uterus and put into a tank on the ship, a tank of special fluid, and gestated until the time to be quote unquote born and taken out of the tube and raised there on the ship. And then to go back to an earlier step in the process, what has happened before that woman is pregnant is that eggs were removed from her ovaries by certain of the extraterrestrials who do hybridization. And also, sperm was removed from a man, from a husband, if she has a husband, or some other man, if she doesn't have somebody she's intimate with. And then that egg and sperm are taken onto the ship and combined with extraterrestrial reproductive material and genetics, creating an embryo. And then that embryo, on another occasion, when the woman is taken, that little embryo is implanted into her uterus. So that's how a lot of the hybrids are created, whether the hybrids are taken to gestate and live on the ship, or whether they are remaining in the womb full term and live their full lives here on Earth. And then there's another method too, that the woman might already be pregnant, and around the fifth or sixth month in the pregnancy, she's taken by the extraterrestrial beings, and they will inject her with some of their material with ET genetics in it. They'll inject it with like a hypodermic needle right through the wall of her stomach and the wall of the uterus and right into the growing fetus. And that's how that fetus becomes a hybrid.
Wow. So what about well, let me back up for a minute, because you just said that they oftentimes would take the fetus or egg, I'm sorry, from the woman, as well as the sperm from the male, combine them. So you hear stories that the ETs are don't even have a sex, maybe there's no female or male gender. So is this their inability to actually impregnate somebody on their end, where okay, we're going to bring a female up here and infuse our male side or male sperm with our female to produce these hybrids?
Well, different species of extraterrestrials do it in different ways because they are constructed in different ways. Some of them do not have genital organs like we females and males have. So that's why when they're creating a hybrid embryo, they just give their something from them, from their bodies, that has their genetics in it, and mix that with our sperm and eggs. Now, but there are other methods too that hybrids are created. Um, for instance, a woman might be taken and actually has sex with a male extraterrestrial. And that would have to be the kind of male that does have genitals similar in many ways to ours, or a human male sometimes is taken and will have sex with an extraterrestrial female who again has enough genitalia that's similar enough to ours so that that act can happen. And there are cases too where sometimes a woman will be here at home in bed, and a visitor, extraterrestrial visitor, will come and copulate with her and then leave. And she may or may not be fully aware of that. She might think when that's going on, whoa, this is a really vivid dream. And a lot of these beings have a way of really pleasuring the human woman, so that sometimes it just seems to the woman that, whoa, she's having a really exotic dream. Um, and it's very exciting and pleasurable. But she doesn't really see who it is who's doing that. And she's not quite sure if it's a dream or if it's really happening. And yet it may be really happening.
Wow. Whoa. I mean, wow.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I don't even have
It's a
words
lot.
for it. Like, whoa.
Right. Well, there really is a lot to this whole program. And I have been so privileged to be able to work with people and regress them to the details of these things happening. So that's how I know that sometimes they do happen.
They need to put an instruction book for that one together. I mean, if they know the real deal, I mean, whoa. I mean, just, I don't know. That's interesting enough. But, it makes it kind of, you wonder, because you don't hear a lot of males. Every now and then, you hear a male said, I have some, you know, hybrid babies. But you hear a lot from the female. So is that
Yes.
something us males don't get the opportunity to say, okay, I just had this mental encounter with an ET female type entity, and it was out there. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, some of them do have awareness of having been together with an extraterrestrial female in a sexual way, and some of them are not, because that hasn't happened. It's happened with the sperm removal,
Mm.
which they may or may not be consciously aware of. Again, this is where regression can be very helpful because they can go back and find out the details of those things that did happen that they had not consciously known about. Anyway, there are many males who do have awareness that they have hybrid babies and children, and are taken now and then by the beings to see the babies and children. And I was regressing a woman about a week ago who had not really known that she had hybrid children, although she had a number of, earlier in her life, she had a number of those temporary pregnancies that suddenly ended. She had not known during those years that extraterrestrials were doing this process with her. Um, so she had not known that she had hybrid children. But in the regression we did, without even thinking about the possibility of her having hybrid children, part of that experience that came up in the regression was that she was taken into a room on the UFO, and there was a whole group of children, and 5 of them, these were hybrid children, and 5 of them were introduced to her as hers. And they were all different ages, which makes sense because these pregnancies happened, one by one over a period of years. And so she was really surprised. And I thought, remarkably receptive and okay about the fact that she had these 5 hybrid children all living on the same ship. Now, I do know people personally, women, who have found they have many more hybrid children than that. Um, in some cases, one woman had 125 hybrid children that she eventually found out about. Another woman had 134 hybrid children. These are just people I know and have worked with. So, there may be many other people too who, with their knowing it or without their knowing it, have actually had quite a number of hybrid children. And many of these women, I found this out back in the early 1990s when I was newly doing this work with people who experience these things, that many of these women really wished that they could bring those children home and raise them. In other words, even if the children looked different, they kind of looked like they might be these women's children, but also looked different because they weren't fully human. But a number of these women really wished and asked for permission to, bring the children home and raise them here. But they were always told by the adult extraterrestrials that, no, these children were not human enough in proportion to be able to live here successfully. They would probably die, and they would probably not be very well accepted because they looked different enough from us humans. But I thought that was quite moving, that a number of these women really, really wanted to have a lifelong relationship right here on Earth with those children.
So, what about, since we get ready to go down this road of disclosure? What are your thoughts? Are we really going to hear because there's just so many aspects or tentacles when it comes down to disclosure movement.
Right.
And then, I did have something that was on my mind. Have you ever heard of the book called Alien Interview?
Alien Interview?
Yeah.
No, I don't know that book. Who wrote that?
Let me see who wrote that. It's on my list. I'm reading it right as we speak. So let me see who the author is. I think it's Lawrence something. Let me see real quick. I should know because I'm reading the thing right now. Let's see here. I'm almost finding it. It's in my text. Oh, there we go. No, not that one.
Justin Senior here. If you want to
kill that one. Well, I'm trying to find I'm actually reading it on my iPad, but it's supposed to be a pretty good read here. Oh, here it is. I found it. I don't know why this thing is acting up. But anyway, anybody in the audience, it's Lawrence. Lawrence Spencer. That's his name. Okay. Lawrence Spencer. There we go. And it's supposed to be an authentic interview from an alien from the era of the Roswell crash. It was supposed to be one of the 3 aliens, survivors, the one who was actually the captain, the pilot, the leader of the pack, supposedly had an interview that was done to explain a lot of things that we should know about the history of things. So I'm actually reading it. I'll do a follow up and we'll talk about it someday. Some other people here live, but I just got it, and I just wanted to know if you heard about it or
not. No, but I am very pleased to hear about it, and I will see if I can get a copy of that. Did you get that on Amazon?
It's on Amazon, but someone sent me a PDF of it, and I got your email. I'll email it to you later, tonight after the show.
Good. Excellent. I'd like that. Yeah, I like to learn as much as I can about this. I learn mostly through the people I do regression work with, but I'm always interested in other people's perspectives and experiences. And I think that there certainly are a number of different kinds of beings who would like to educate humans about them. And some like those extraterrestrials who create the hybrids who live on Earth, they definitely want humans to learn more and more about them and to know about this whole existence of all these other species of human-like people out there in space, because we have been so shielded from knowing about that. So you mentioned about disclosure. Those of us who, like yourself, Roderick, who are very, very involved in this whole field, we see that what is being publicly disclosed is so tiny, so minute compared to what we know. But at least it's a start. Wondering about, and there is a mystery about it. They want more reports about it, so all of that is good. But those of us really involved in this, either as experiencers or people, researching about it in one way or the other, we think, oh my goodness, the government, all of the governments are just so far behind in what many of us know. But they have their own reasons for coming at this very, very slowly. But I think it is going to happen. And it's interesting to me, and I would think it would be to you as well, that there's this parallel track. In other words, the government and other governments too are giving a certain amount of information out mostly about the UFOs, the crafts. And then, but not about the personal experiences. And then the other track that we're all on is, kind of like more of the personal insider point of view from the people who've actually had experiences with the beings on those crafts. And I think that this is, of course, much more authentic. I know that Stephen Bassett, who has been working for decades now to bring about disclosure, official government disclosure, he's just done so much work on this. My goodness. Anyway, he held a very important hearing in Washington, D.C., right down the street from the White House, and had a lot of Congress members, people who represented the government, present listening to all these testimonies about UFOs. And he has been wanting to do a hearing featuring the experiencers of extraterrestrial contact. And he's been saying for years now, Barbara, whenever I do that, I want you there testifying with the material that the work you do. But that kind of hearing hasn't happened yet. But I hope it will. And I do hope the government will keep on researching and giving out more information, and particularly about the people. There are millions of people in the world. That's no exaggeration. Millions of people worldwide who are having these personal experiences with some of the beings. So it's really a very important thing going on the world. And we need to really have more public acknowledgement about this, because it's so helpful for the people who do experience these things. So often they spent most of the years of their lives feeling different and odd and alone and embarrassed, and haven't had anybody to talk to. So programs like this, what we're doing right now, and many others, are really helping people to get some validation for the experiences that they've had.
Wow. I think it's pretty much, I'm not going to hold you up too much longer if you like, but I just think now it appears that everybody was so happy. Okay, we got all this disclosure coming, all these new things, and for a moment I thought the jig was up. I thought, okay, we ain't got to do nothing else. I mean, they're gonna release all this information, and it looks like the rules. They just changed the rules. The game of hiding it from us is still the same. They just figured out a better way to change the rules, but also get better funding now. Make sure the money comes. And all,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And it's like, and people have this expectation, and I'm one of them, but I just don't think that they're just going to open the book and say, here's what's in room number 3 that we haven't even asked about. Now, oh yeah, they'll disclose some things that, maybe we can prove that we know, but they're not going to open up all the other doors and say, y'all didn't know nothing about this. Come here, check this out. You know what I mean? The public. So
I do know. Yeah, I don't think, well, who knows? But I think whatever is going to come forth is going to come very slowly, and just a little piece and another little piece. And whether the whole picture will ever come out, I don't know. Of course, there are some people who say that, I don't know if this is accurate, but some people say that there's maybe going to be a big showing that people in the world will not be able to overlook, even the governments. In other words, if a huge fleet of UFOs would come over a major city and then every other major city in the world, and it's just impossible to not see, then that might speed things up a bit. Who knows?
wow.
We'll just have to wait.
I think we are. I think we're going to have to wait and see. And I think the game again, they're going to just bend those rules into doing those things. So, but Barbara, I'm glad you hopped up in here tonight, and just
Well, me too. It was a complete surprise. I just opened my cell phone to check my messages, and I saw, oh, Roderick is on. Great. So I clicked in, and here we are.
Well, I'm gonna we're live on YouTube, so I'm gonna put it into what we call a 3-minute break here on YouTube, and then I'm gonna get into this Anunnaki talk a little bit. You want to hang around, or you just want to go back and listen to us a little bit while you mosing around?
Well, I need to take a little break right now, but I will hop right back on to Clubhouse.
No problem. We'll see. I'll be looking into the room when you're hopping in and out, and we got some other conversations, and then I will see what you have to say about that. Okay. I appreciate you hopping in with us.
Okay. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
Okay. All right, everyone. We're here on YouTube Live.